In case you didn't know it, mister, you are a shepherd. You're a pastor of a family.
Dr. Tony Evans says becoming that kind of leader requires learning to be a better follower.
That's why a man comes to church, to find out what God has to say so he can transfer it back to his family around the dinner table.
This is The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. Many churches suffer from a lack of male leadership, even male attendance. But today, in a special Father's Day message, Dr. Evans explains why men need the church even more than the church needs them. Let's join him.
We live in a day when far too many men have been neutered by misinformation, misdefinition, by abuse, misuse, and neglect. I've called today what I want to talk to all of us is why men need the church. Or I could flip it and call it why the church needs men, because it works both ways. The culture needs men, our families need men, the fatherless generation, 40% now in America of all children grow up without a father in the home. So it's clear that we need them in the home. But it is also clear that we need them in the church, that men are critical in God's kingdom plan. When Satan wanted to make his move, he would always seek to get rid of the males. In Pharaoh's Egypt, Pharaoh said, kill all the males. Herod, kill all the male children so we can get to this so-called king of the Jews. Get rid of the men, or the men to be, in order to stifle the culture. In what I share today, I am in no way seeking to reduce, limit, or underappreciate the critical, essential, necessary, important, and potent role that women play in God's economy and in God's kingdom. But neither do I want to neuter the strategic and critical and unique role that men have been called to play in God's kingdom either. Paul wrote his son in the ministry, Timothy, a reasonably young pastor who was, to use our contemporary nomenclature, the senior pastor at Ephesus Bible Fellowship. Ephesus is the one church that's written about more than any other church in the New Testament. Acts chapter 18, 19, and 20. Then the whole book of Ephesians. Then the first church written in the book of Revelation. The church at Ephesus. It's spoken about over and over again. They have discovered the city of Ephesus and these archaeological ruins, and they've discovered the houses of the elite plus the houses of the common folk, and they've discovered and reconstructed the commercial district of the city. Its long winding roads. It was the creme de la creme of the New Testament world in Asia Minor, the city of Ephesus, where the Ephesians lived and where the church of Ephesus was founded by the Apostle Paul. It was founded during a time of great idolatry. The temple of Diana was there. Great idolatry, but it was known for great profit and great business and great commerce. And in the midst of this potent community, Paul writes this young pastor and he says, now I want to write you to tell you how the church is supposed to work. I don't want you to go downtown to get your instructions. So you ought to get your instructions on the church from the Word of God, which is the ground and pillar of the truth. One of the things you see, and this is what Paul is alluding to, are these mammoth pillars in Ephesus that were to hold up structures. He says the church is the ground and pillar of the truth. It's supposed to hold up the truth no matter what the culture is saying, no matter what's popular, no matter what's the in thing to do, no matter what is politically correct, no matter what is popular around town, all of that is inconsequential to the truth. And the job of the church is to hold up the truth, not satisfy the culture. The job of the church is to hold up God's standard, not make everybody feel good or not make you popular necessarily. And so we have this issue of men, and it is addressed here and other places, but we will use this as our popular reference point to speak the truth about men in general, but specifically men in the church. One thing is clear in Scripture. When men relinquish their roles, they have opened the door for the devil. The first thing that men ought to be doing is leading out in prayer. He's talking about the church here, and he says, what I want is I want men, he says, in chapter 2, verse 8, in every place to pray. Most of the time in church, when it comes to prayer meeting, they're women. When it comes to sports, there's men. Oh, for the day at the church, our church, this church, that the men say to the ladies, you stay home, I'm going. Because I need to call down heaven on our situation. I need to call down heaven on our financial problems. I need to call down heaven on what's on the protection of our children. I need to draw down heaven. Let men in every place pray. Let men call down heaven and intercede on behalf of earth. The church is to equip men, call men to prayer. It's also to call men to pastoring. That is shepherding. And every man here who has a family has been called to pastor. Let me show you how serious your pastoral role is. Let me read it for you in 1 Corinthians chapter 14. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, this is what he says in verse 34. The women are to keep silent in the churches. We'll talk about that in a moment. For they are not permitted to speak, but are to subject themselves, just as the law also says. If they desire to learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home. For it is improper for a woman to speak in church. Okay, now I didn't write this, so don't shoot the messenger. But I'm going to explain it as we go along. He says, if the wife has a question, let him ask her husband at home. Now that assumes that the husband can answer it. But who are the ones in the Bible studies? Who are the ones listening to learn? Who are the ones reading the text? Who are the ones leading in devotions? It typically isn't the man. He's got the remote. It says, let her ask the husband at home. That means if he doesn't have the answer, he's going to find it. Sure, you don't have all the answers. Sure. And that's why a man comes to church. He comes to church to find out what God has to say so he can transfer it back to his family around the dinner table. That's why it comes. It was inconceivable in the Bible that a man would send his wife and family to church while he stayed home without good reason. That was an inconceivable thought. Y'all go. I don't feel like going today. So you have a shepherding role, a spiritual leadership role. The church is to facilitate that, to help that, to grow that. 1 Corinthians 11, he's talking about the church. He writes to the church of Corinth in 1 Corinthians 11. And this principle is staggering in its implication for men and for ladies. Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of Christ. All right? So this principle operates in the Trinity. God is the head of Christ. Christ is the head of every man. The man is the head of a woman. The issue is head. Or let me give it another word, headship. Far too many Christian men don't have Christ over them. They want to demand a submission that they refuse to model. They insist, my wife won't submit to me. But who does she see you submitting to so she can see what submission ought to look like? See, she should see the submission you're requiring, because Christ is over every man. That's why you're supposed to be the first one in church to find out what Christ expects of you, because you're submitted to his authority. You need the church to find out what Christ expects of you as a man so that you can submit to that, so that she can model the submission that she's seeing from you. And so maybe some of the rebellion that you're experiencing in the home is some of the rebellion that Jesus is experiencing from you. He goes on to creation, verse 8, for man does not originate from woman, but woman from man. God took the rib out of Adam's side and he created woman. She originated from him. He's going back to there is an order. And then he lays one out for you ladies. That's a bombshell. Verse 10, therefore the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. What does that mean? She ought to have a symbol. There ought to be something visible that demonstrates she's under authority. You notice it's under authority. Now, remember, he said a woman should not speak. But then he says in verse 5 of 1 Corinthians 11, if every woman who has her head uncovered while praying or prophesies disgraces her head, for she is one and the same as the woman whose head is shaved. In other words, he's got a woman now praying and prophesying, but Timothy said she can't. But in 1 Corinthians 11, she is. She's praying and prophesying, and you can't prophesy silently. Prophesying is speaking. So she's speaking, and she's speaking divine truth. She's speaking divine truth in 1 Corinthians 11, and 1 Timothy says she must be silent. How can she be silent in 1 Timothy and speaking in 1 Corinthians 11 when both of them have to do with church? First the church of Corinth and the church at Ephesus. He says the reason we can make an exception in 1 Corinthians 11 so she can pray publicly and prophesy publicly, and she can't do it in 1 Timothy is because in 1 Corinthians 11 she's doing it under headship. So 1 Corinthians 11 is an exception to 1 Timothy 2 because in 1 Timothy 2 she cannot be the final authority. But in 1 Corinthians 11 she's not the final authority because she's doing what she's doing under headship. Because now it's under authority, it's not independent of authority, nor is it the final authority.
Dr. Evans will have more to say about that final authority when he continues our message in just a moment, including a look at the role angels play in what God does through his people on earth. Right now, though, he's here with this thought for us. Dr. Evans?
The greatest need in our world today is for Jesus Christ, the living Savior who died on the cross, who's risen and sits on the right hand of the Father. The more people who meet Jesus, the more lives will be transformed. And that's the message of the Urban Alternative. That's the essence of my ministry. Would you become a partner with us at the Urban Alternative so that we can take the good news of Jesus everywhere we can, through every means we can, for the transformation of lives?
Without the faithful support of our partners, there would be no way we could keep bringing you this broadcast each day. So as our way of saying thanks to anyone who can come alongside us right now with a contribution of any amount, we'd like to send you a copy of Tony's best-selling book, Kingdom Man. It talks about the problems that occur when men don't live up to their God-given responsibilities, and how you can repair that damage when you decide it's time for a change. So drop by TonyEvans.org today. Make a donation of any size before this special offer expires on Sunday, and request your copy of Kingdom Man. You can also get Kingdom Man with an accompanying DVD-based Bible study for your church, study guides, leaders' guides, gift items, and more. It's a one-stop shop where everything is 30% off through Father's Day. Again, visit TonyEvans.org today for the details, or call us at 1-800-800-3222, where staff members are on hand day and night, 7 days a week to help you. That's 1-800-800-3222. Right now, though, Dr. Evans is back with more of today's lesson. Let's join him.
The reason why you have to stay in line in the church, he says, is because of the angels. What's angels got to do with this? All right. Angels have a full-time job. You see it in St. John chapter 1. Jesus tells Nathanael, you will see angels going up and down the Son of Man. What are angels? They're God's post office. They're God's delivery boys. They're God's delivery system. In other words, when Jesus wants to do something on earth, he sends an angel. Angels means messengers. He has a messenger carrier service whose job it is to carry from heaven down to earth. But the angels only work if authority is intact. If headship is operating properly. If headship is not operating properly, then the angels are put on hold. So if you're out of order, you're blocking prayer and being answered. So ladies, if you illegitimately are rebelling against your husband, then you're blocking God answering your prayers. You may be the delay to God answering your prayers because you're operating out of order. Or man, you could be blocking it because you're not operating under Christ, so it's keeping her from operating under you, so everybody's out of line. It says because of the messenger service. You need the church to make sure that things are in alignment so that God is free to respond with his messenger service. Our Jewish father understood the importance of the temple, the church. He'd be the first one up in the morning. By the way, I grew up without much, like many of you. My father got to work sometimes. Other times he didn't get to go to work because he was a longshoreman, and you do that by what they call orders. You had to be called in when the boat was coming in to unload the boat as the stevedore longshoreman. Since the time he got saved, I cannot remember one time him asking me, do you feel like going to church? I'm trying to remember, but I can't remember one time where the only way I got out of church was a lie. I had to lie my way out of church. I'm sick. Oh, I feel so bad. I wasn't sick. I didn't want to go. Because as head of the house, worship was never an option. It was not a vote. You hear some fathers say, well, I don't want to make my kids go to church. You make them go to school. Because you want them to become something. Nor did he ever send us to church while he stayed home. He would only send us if he had to work. He would never send us while he stayed home. That was inconceivable. Because a man of the kingdom who is also a man of the church understands that that is his role as head. To lead in the worship of his family, or as Joshua put it in Joshua 24:15, as for me and my house. Which brings the final thought I want to give you about the reason why men need the church, and the church needs men, is to provide spiritual protection. Notice what he says again in 1 Timothy 2. He says, verse 14, and it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. In other words, she got tricked. She got duped. He went in with his eyes wide open. He knew what he was doing. See, his job was to transfer the truth, which is what he did to Eve. That's why Eve could tell Satan, because Adam transferred it to her. Then he went passive on us. It's called the silence of Adam. He got quiet and let the devil do the rapping. And she talking to him, and they all getting together with each other, and all hell breaks loose. And then God says this. Watch this now. Watch this, ladies. You're not going to like this, but God said it. He says to Adam in Genesis chapter 3, because you listen to your wife. Now, is a man supposed to listen to his wife? Absolutely. She's a partner, unless what you're listening to contradicts your head. See, once what you're hearing from her contradicts what you're hearing from him, you're no longer to listen to her. But the reverse is true. As long as what you're saying agrees with him, she's to listen to you. But if what you're saying disagrees with him, she's no longer obligated to listen to you because she has a head over you. He says, because you listen to your wife, all hell has broken loose here. And far too many of us as men are listening to the devil and bringing it home. Listening to the homies and bringing it home. Listening to the posse and bringing it home. He says he did not provide his spiritual role of guarding the garden, of protection. The job of the church is to equip men to guard the garden from the intruder. We have a generation of boys today who are not going to make it to manhood. They may make it physically. Far too many are tied to boyhood. And that's why they'll send a woman out to work while they stay home. That's boyhood. He says in chapter 5, he says, it is horrible a man who does not provide for his family. If anybody stays home, it should be her, not you. Then there's manhood. Kingdom man is a person who exercises authority and responsibility under God. There should be no boy in our church, at least, who doesn't know what it is to be a man, even if he doesn't have a father in the home. Because if he does not get that, then he may grow up to be a man just like his mother. A neutered male.
Dr. Tony Evans, talking about the importance of men being potent leaders in their homes. And he'll come back with a final illustration for us in just a moment. Our message today was called Why Men Need the Church. And if you'd like to add it to your home or church library, you can request it on CD or DVD. Just visit tonyevans.org for the details. And when you do, don't forget to request your copy of Tony's best-selling book, Kingdom Man, our thank you gift when you help our ministry stay strong through the summer months with a contribution of any amount. Contact us right away because this special offer is only available through the weekend. You can get all the information you need and make your request online at tonyevans.org. Or let one of our staff members help you by calling us at 1-800-800-3222. If you were interested in flying a plane or performing surgery, you'd go to flight school or medical school. But where do men go to learn to be godly men? That's Dr. Evans' subject tomorrow, so don't miss it. In the meantime, he's back now with a final illustration to wrap up today's lesson.
The central position on a football team is the quarterback. The most valued position, the highest paid position, because he is the leader. He is the leader. He calls the play. He rallies the troops because he's the leader. Now, different quarterbacks have different personalities. Some of the big rah-rah guys. Others are not rah-rah guys, but they know how to take care of business because they're the quarterback. Let me tell you something else quarterback's got to be able to do. Hot one, hot two, hot three. He gets the ball. He fades back. And all of a sudden, he is under attack. The linemen are coming after him, and there's linebackers or defensive backs who are blitzing him. Some will be coming that he can see, others will be coming on his blind side. He should do his best to avoid being tackled, to avoid being thrown down. He should do his best, but sometimes he can't get away. Sometimes he can't run far enough or fast enough. He's under too much attack. But because he is the leader, he must be willing to take the hit. He must be willing to get sacked. He must be willing to be thrown behind the line of scrimmage. He must know that there are going to be times it's going to get rough back there. But hey, you're the leader. Take the hit. And when you get hit, don't fumble the ball. Because that's what you've been called to do. Don't tell me you want to be a quarterback and you're not willing to take the hit.
The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you.